Even with modernization, some countries still struggle economically. One such tradition is the buying and selling of brides, thriving in various parts of the globe. In these nations, the role of women is reduced to bearing children and household care. This stifles their potential and perpetuates inequality and poverty. Let's explore 10 countries where brides are for sale. From Bulgaria to Afghanistan, the stories we uncover will shed light on a dark aspect of human societies. Our journey begins in Bulgaria, in the town of Stara Zagora, home to the Gypsy Bride Market. Here, young girls are paraded in front of potential husbands, their worth determined by beauty and family status. The bride price can range from $7,500 to over $20,000, seen as a necessary investment or survival means. Families gather, negotiate, and agree on a price with little input from the brides. Despite efforts to curb this practice, it continues, driven by poverty and cultural traditions. Next, we travel to China, where the one-child policy has had far-reaching consequences. The policy led to a significant gender imbalance, with millions more men than women. This surplus has caused bride prices to skyrocket, with the average now around $220,000. The high cost has led to increased human trafficking, with women from neighboring countries forced into marriages. The commodification of women in China highlights the complex interplay between government policies, cultural norms, and economic pressures. In Malaysia, the concept of mail-order brides has gained popularity, particularly among men seeking wives from other countries. These platforms offer services from basic matchmaking to premium subscriptions costing around $500. Many women become mail-order brides out of economic necessity, hoping to escape poverty. However, the reality is often far from the dream, with many finding themselves in abusive relationships. The mail-order bride industry in Malaysia is a complex web of hope, exploitation, and survival. It underscores the need for greater protections for women and a more equitable distribution of resources. In Egypt, the international demand for brides has created a market where women are often forced into marriages without their consent. This practice is deeply rooted in cultural traditions and economic pressures that many families face. The allure of financial gain often overshadows the personal freedoms and rights of the women involved. The bride price, which is around $2,000, is seen by many as a way to alleviate financial burdens. This sum of money can be a significant amount for families struggling to make ends meet. However, it also commodifies women, reducing them to mere transactions in a market driven by economic desperation. For the women involved, this practice is a violation of their rights and autonomy. They are often left with little to no say in their future, forced to comply with decisions made by their families. The emotional and psychological toll on these women is immense, as they navigate a life that has been chosen for them. Many families view marriage as a means of securing their daughters' futures, often at the expense of personal freedoms. They believe that marrying their daughters off to foreign men will provide them with better opportunities and a more stable life. However, this often results in the women being isolated and disconnected from their own culture and support systems. Efforts to combat this practice have been met with resistance, driven by cultural norms and economic hardships. Activists and organizations working to end forced marriages face significant challenges as they try to change deeply ingrained beliefs and practices. Public awareness campaigns and legal reforms are crucial in this fight. The situation in Egypt highlights the need for a multifaceted approach to address the root causes of bride commodification. This includes economic support for families, education for women, and legal protections to ensure their rights are upheld. Only through a comprehensive strategy can we hope to see meaningful change and the end of forced marriages. In Latvia, the higher population of women compared to men has created a unique market for mail-order brides. The cost of a Latvian bride can range from $4,000 to $6,000, reflecting demand and perceived value. Many women turn to the mail-order bride industry to escape economic hardship. However, this often leads to exploitation and abuse, as women find themselves in unfamiliar environments with little support. Efforts to address the issue have had mixed results, as the demand for Latvian brides continues to grow. In India, the practice of selling brides is deeply rooted in cultural traditions and economic pressures. The cost of a bride can vary widely, with some being bought for as low as $35. Many women are sold into marriage against their will, often finding themselves in abusive relationships. Efforts to combat this practice have been met with resistance, driven by cultural norms and economic hardships. The situation in India highlights the need for a multifaceted approach to address the root causes of bride commodification. Greater protections for women and a more equitable distribution of resources are essential to prevent such practices. In South Africa, the tradition of paying a bride price, known as lobola, is still prevalent. The average bride price is around $7,000, seen as a necessary investment or a means of securing futures. For the women involved, this practice is a violation of their rights and autonomy. Many families view marriage as a means of securing their daughters' futures, often at the expense of personal freedoms. Efforts to combat this practice have been met with resistance, driven by cultural norms and economic hardships. The situation in South Africa highlights the need for a multifaceted approach to address the root causes of bride commodification. In Afghanistan, the bride price is around $10,000, seen as a way to alleviate financial burdens. For the women involved, this practice is a violation of their rights and autonomy. Many women are sold into marriage against their will, often finding themselves in abusive relationships. Efforts to combat this practice have been met with resistance, driven by cultural norms and economic hardships. The situation in Afghanistan highlights the need for a multifaceted approach to address the root causes of bride commodification. Protecting the rights of women is essential to prevent such practices. In Vietnam, the international demand for brides has created a market where women are often forced into marriages without their consent. This demand is driven by various factors, including economic hardships and the allure of a better life abroad. Many women, especially from rural areas, are seen as commodities, and their families often feel pressured to marry them off to foreign men. The cost of offline dating can range between $800 to $2,000, seen as a way to alleviate financial burdens. This financial transaction is often justified as a means to secure a stable future for the women involved. However, the reality is far more complex and troubling. For the women involved, this practice is a violation of their rights and autonomy. They are often left with little choice and face significant emotional and psychological trauma. Many of these women find themselves in foreign countries, isolated and without support. Many families view marriage as a means of securing their daughters' futures, often at the expense of personal freedoms. The societal pressure to conform to traditional roles and the promise of financial stability can be overwhelming. Efforts to combat this practice have been met with resistance, driven by cultural norms and economic hardships. Activists and organizations working to protect these women face significant challenges, including pushback from communities and lack of resources. The situation in Vietnam highlights the need for a multifaceted approach to address the root causes of bride commodification. This includes economic development, education, and legal reforms to protect women's rights and ensure their autonomy. Finally, we arrive in South Korea, where a declining birth rate has created a unique market for brides. This phenomenon has been growing over the past few decades, leading to significant social and economic changes within the country. Many South Korean women prefer to marry foreigners, leading to a rise in international dating platforms. These platforms have become increasingly popular, offering a way for women to connect with potential partners from around the world. Subscriptions for these platforms can cost around $1,500, reflecting demand and perceived value. The high cost is often justified by the promise of finding a suitable partner and the extensive services provided by these platforms. The commodification of women in South Korea is driven by cultural norms and economic pressures. Traditional expectations and the desire for financial stability play significant roles in this complex issue. Many families view marriage as a means of securing their daughters' futures, often at the expense of personal freedoms. This mindset is deeply ingrained in the culture, making it difficult for women to pursue their own aspirations. Efforts to combat this practice have been met with resistance, driven by cultural norms and economic hardships. Activists and community leaders face significant challenges in changing long-standing beliefs and practices. The situation in South Korea highlights the need for a multifaceted approach to address the root causes of bride commodification. This includes policy changes, educational initiatives, and community support to create a more equitable society for all. That's all we have for you today. We hope you gained a deeper understanding of the troubling issue of bride commodification. It's a practice that highlights persistent gender inequalities and economic disparities. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and click on the screen for more content like this. By staying informed and raising awareness, we can all contribute to the fight against these injustices. Together, we can make a difference.